when I did ayahuasca for the first time, the third night, I believe, was extreme orgasm. During ceremony, my whole body was like in pure pleasure, and I was seeing like all the colors, and my whole body just felt so good. And I saw that if I let go and surrendered to the pleasure and the orgasm that I deserved, that I could heal my body of chronic illness and of shame, and that I deserved this.
Welcome to the Worth the Fight podcast, where we bring you powerful conversations surrounding the sensible and therapeutic use of psychedelics and plant medicines towards healing trauma. I'll introduce you to guests who, through their own personal journey and transformation, tell the Worth the Fight story. I'm your host, Matt Simpson, author of Worth the Fight, Acting for a Better World, a guide to spirituality, psychedelic medicines, and overcoming trauma. Thank you for listening. My next guest is Kelli Tennant. You might remember her from Worth the Fight podcast episode number 9, where she interviewed me on her podcast, the Ceremony Wellness podcast with Kelli Tennant. She has the distinction of quickly becoming one of my favorite human beings. It's been an absolute joy getting to know her these past few months. And I'm continually wowed and proud of the messaging that she puts out, the work that she's doing for our human family, her open, honest, and vulnerable spirit. You can find her on Instagram at Kelli M. Tennant. You can find her on her website at kellitennant.com. You guys will be blown away by this conversation. This is one of my favorite ones to date. And this is why I'm doing this podcast, is to have these inspiring conversations that light my heart up too. And sharing outlooks and insight from people that have walked through the fire of transformation and won't settle for bullshit incorporated. And I'm just wowed and proud of her brave spirit, open sharing. It'll be an absolute delight to share this podcast with y'all. If you find value in our spirited conversation, please subscribe, rate and review, or share, or do all the above. This will help us expand our circle of influence and get these vital conversations out into more channels. Without further ado, I give you my conversation with Kelli Tennant. Thank you so much for listening. Kelli, great to have you on the show. How are you doing?
Thank you for having me. I'm so good. I'm so happy to be talking to you.
Ooh, thank you so much for taking this time. At the Worth the Fight podcast, we dive into inspirational stories about overcoming and the power of psychedelic medicines. And your story has been very inspiring to me. We've connected. I had the privilege of being on your podcast a month back, and I'm so unbelievably excited to share your story with my audience. Can you talk about how psychedelics have positively impacted your life?
Yeah. Wow. How have they not impacted my life? It's been amazing. And honestly, I'm still so new to this world that I think about it and I feel like I've been utilizing psilocybin and ayahuasca for so long because there's such an integral part of who I am and the woman that I am becoming. And it's amazing to think that this has just been about a year-long journey for me, and watching how drastically my life has changed because of it. And it started for me with ayahuasca back in February of 2019. And I just got to a point in my life where I had come out of a really difficult breakup, and I had quit my job a year prior, and I was going through this massive shift, and I knew that there was something more that I was kind of missing and that I wanted access to. And I had a girlfriend of mine who was going to this retreat center in Santa Cruz, and she said these people had come highly recommended and were incredible healers and facilitators with the medicine, and really had a lot of integrity around the ceremony and utilizing the medicine in the best way. And I just felt like that was the answer that I was looking for. And I was really open to whatever I was meant to experience and see. And that weekend, we did 3 ceremonies, and I was with so many incredible people in a very intimate setting. I think there was only 16 of us, and then there were 6 healers and facilitators. And I realized that weekend that there was so much that I had suppressed and so much that I had not had access to my entire life. And as painful and difficult as many of the moments were, I was able to put a lot of pieces together for myself and understand myself in a really profound way, and realize what blocks I had and what things happened during my childhood that were leading me to make certain decisions as a 31-year-old woman, and what was really limiting me and what made me, be triggered in certain situations and feeling that lack of worthiness and value and always needing to be a people pleaser. And I just felt such a shift in who I was driving away from that retreat that weekend. And the integration process was definitely very intense, and my whole body was kind of buzzing and shaking. But I knew that it almost felt like it was a rewiring of my body. And I knew that medicine was meant for me and that I was meant to do a lot of work with it, because I had opened up so much of myself that I had never seen before. And it was really beautiful.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing
Mm-hmm.
and for walking this path. And there's so much to unpack there.
Mm-hmm.
Like for me, I thought it was profound to be able to go back and access these memories. Like you said, there was so much was suppressed. Did you find that you could go back to those early years?
Yeah, I think that was one of the biggest things for me is, we have this idea that we know what our childhood was like. We were there. Of course we know. And I had been told a lot of stories about things, and I had certain memories about different circumstances and experiences. But there's so many dark moments where I feel like I wasn't present, or I just forgot, or is like locked away in some weird part of my brain. And when I was sitting in ceremony, it was like every night I saw a different part of my childhood that I had missed, or that I had believed was one way, but in reality it was totally different. And I think that we create stories in order to make ourselves feel better or safer. And
Confabulations.
yeah, a great word. And I think that that's what I was feeling, is I had created this story that things were so good and everything was fine, and I was so fortunate and lucky, which I was so fortunate and lucky. I have amazing parents and things were so good in so many ways, but there was also this really severe darkness that I was not acknowledging and was unwilling to take a look at. Things like being molested, and why I was such a perfectionist and such a people pleaser, and why I felt like my relationship with my mom was so strained, and that she didn't want me and that she had rejected me. And all of that was linked back to my birth. I had a very traumatic birth, and I knew that, but I didn't know a lot of details. And the biggest thing that I took away from that weekend was my mom almost died during my birth, and she had extreme, like, horrible staph infection. She had 105 fever. They took me away from her the second my C-section was
Mm.
complete, and they kept me away from her for days. And then once they brought me to her, they told her, okay, you got to breastfeed her. And my mom was like, I'm on morphine. I'm not touching my child with this breast milk. I don't want her to have that. Energetically, I took that as being rejected, and I wasn't held. And then my mom pushed me away. Well, in reality, she was actually trying to protect me. But as a child, I think I took on that energy of rejection. You're not good enough and she doesn't want you. And my whole life, I've been trying to convince her that I am worthy of love, and that we have had such a codependent relationship because I'm so enmeshed with her of trying to prove I'm worthy of her love. And so for me, it's like these memories, which of course, how would we remember our birth, unless we're, working with psychedelics? But these memories of things that had gone on that I had not been able to acknowledge all of a sudden came to the surface. And I thought, now it all makes sense. Like, I can totally understand why I am the way I am, because these things that were so impactful on my tiny little body and brain have been with me and in my body and in my structure and my tissues and my organs, holding on to these painful memories and trauma. And that's why I have gone through so many different experiences, because that's just like sitting there and I haven't been able to see it.
Wow. And you can see it now.
Mm-hmm.
You're unpacking it.
Yes.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. What comes to mind for me, you'd mentioned earlier the shaking, like almost
Mm-hmm.
buzzing in your integration. I read a really profound book, and I don't know if you've read this one. It's by Emily Nagoski. It's
No.
Come As You Are.
Oh,
And
I just bought that.
okay, so it's game changer in terms of a female view of sexuality and the her understanding of the trauma cycle is very profound,
Mm.
and the shaking is part of the trauma cycle. Like, let's say, if something happened to your dog, and you stepped on his foot or something, it would really really hurt him, and he would yelp, and but he would shake it out really quick, and then he would be cool, he'd be good.
Mm.
And we don't do that shake when these traumas happen to us. We live in a society that often doesn't give us that space, that safe space to trust in really diving in and honoring fully the trauma cycle.
Mm.
And so that is something that came to mind when you were talking about the trauma and the shaking. And so I think that's a beautiful thing. Keep shaking off those and closing those loops, really, at the end of the
Mm-hmm.
day.
Well,
And
and even it's funny you bring that up because I was having a fight with my boyfriend last night and we're laying in bed talking and he looks at me and he goes, "Are you shaking?" And I was like, "Yeah, I guess." And I realized my whole body was shaking as I'm having this really difficult conversation with him. And as I thought about it last night and this morning, I was thinking, because of my experience with ayahuasca, is like my body is purging something right now. There is something happening where there is a trauma, there is a feeling that I'm having, this emotion that has probably been suppressed that I've never been able to verbalize, which I'm doing now. And it's uncomfortable, but I'm releasing it. And my
yes,
body is shaking in order to purge it out. It was so wild. It's so crazy to talk to you about that now because it just happened. And I wasn't doing ayahuasca or psilocybin. And it's like your body, once that medicine is in you, it's in you.
it's in
And
you.
it can work with you and allow you to purge as time goes on. And I really believe, and this is something my boyfriend talks about a lot, is like the integration after every ayahuasca ceremony takes a long time. I mean, you can be processing things that happened in ceremony for 5 years later, maybe longer. And so why wouldn't I be, as I'm working through something that is a core wound or trauma, why wouldn't I shake? Because my body now knows how to respond and let go.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And the integration is the work of having these tough conversations and honoring your truth and leaning in and being open and vulnerable. Giving, like you said, giving that pre-verbal trauma a voice now.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think that is admirable that you're embracing the integration process. For me personally, I'm still integrating an experience with ayahuasca that happened on Valentine's Day 2016. It's like, what the fuck was that?
Yeah.
And I might be integrating that like the rest of my life, and
Mm-hmm.
and being okay with that, and to realize that's this work that
Well, and isn't it, sorry to cut you off,
no
but
worries, no worries.
this brings me to this idea of like, and I'm such a type A controlling, like I'm always focused on the end goal and end result. And that is what working with plant medicine has taught me, is there's actually no end goal or end result to achieve. There's nothing to achieve in ceremony. And we always want to achieve this thing and get the gold star and the pat on the back and be like, you did great. You've now completed level 5. And it's like that, there is none of that in this. And so it's like you talk about this integration of something that happened 3 years ago that maybe you'll process your whole life. That's what the work is. We
Hmm.
never get to an end goal. There's always room for growth and realization and healing. And I think sometimes that's where I get tripped up, is I want to feel like I accomplished something and then I miss out on the journey of doing the work itself. And I think that I'm so much harder on myself because of it, rather than knowing that this is the experience, like this is the work, and it's okay to not achieve anything here. And I don't know, that's what that brought up for me. It's so interesting. I love that you bring up that this is like a lifelong process.
Absolutely. As Simon Sinek would say, this is the infinite game that we are playing.
Yes.
And you know, he's an author that wrote the book Start With Why, and he's bringing this journey thinking that if it is indeed the journey, then, and if we never arrive, then we better get gosh darn comfortable with the climb, who we're climbing with, and the pace in which we're climbing, and to make time for enjoying the view on our way up.
Yeah, so good.
So your work at Ceremony Wellness is super inspiring for me as a podcaster who's a few months into this after taking a dare from my dear friend Nick, who will be listening to this. He's like, just get 3 episodes out and we'll talk about it afterwards. And you know, just dive on in. And you know, you've been at this for a year and a half. Can you tell us a little bit about Ceremony Wellness and your motivation, your inspiration, and what you're trying to accomplish?
Yeah, you know, it's been such an interesting process. I quit my job working as a TV host in sports a year and a half ago, and I was in a very toxic environment, and I was not treated well, and I was allowing people to treat me poorly, and I didn't have a good sense of self-worth and value. And I knew that because it was affecting my body and I had such severe chronic illness, that I needed to be in a space that was healthy for me. When I looked at it, I was like, okay, well, I've been working in TV doing the same thing for over 10 years. It's really the only job I've ever had. What can I do? How do I get out of this and create a better, different life for myself? And I knew that I was really good at interviewing people and getting them to tell me their deepest, darkest secrets. And it's something that I don't know, I guess it's my gift. People have been telling me their stuff since I was like 5 years old. My mom would always joke. She's like, I don't know why, but you have this thing and everyone just wants to tell you their secrets.
That's a tremendous gift.
It's a gift, but when you're little, you're like, this is awful. But I realized that it was a gift, and I had these, you know, incredibly famous, successful athletes talking to me in the clubhouse, telling me really intimate details about struggles they're having with their daughter who has an eating disorder, or their own like body image issues, or feeling like they're never good enough. And I thought, okay, I've been able to do that. I've been able to create an environment for myself where I can have these really intimate interviews and experiences with people. How can I take that into working with women and more of a wellness spin? And so when I was at the tail end of being off from work and then quitting my job, I created the idea for the podcast. And at the time it was called The Platform, and it then became Ceremony Wellness because the show evolves as I evolve. And it started out with talking to a lot of female founders of non-toxic companies and healers that I had worked with, and my doctors. And I think that I did a really nice job of laying the foundation for what was important to me, which was really supporting women in a variety of ways. But what I realized as time went on, especially in the first year, is I was just touching the surface, and there was so much more. And the more I healed, the more I realized that there were deeper and deeper layers to go to. And I think working with ayahuasca and psilocybin really showed me that at the beginning of this year, that I had so much more to offer in terms of conversations and the people that I was attracting and reaching, and that it wasn't about the products that we put on our body. Yes, of course, I believe fully that putting clean, non-toxic products in and on our bodies is crucial, especially when you're dealing with chronic illness. I don't want chemicals in my body. But something that I have become very verbal about recently is so many people have chronic illness, over 60 million Americans. And we're trying to heal it, whether it's with a pill or eating a certain diet or exercising this way or resting. And that's all really great. But if we're not dealing with the emotional trauma and triggers and things that are stored in our body, in our fascia, in our organs, we're not going to heal. And I had experienced that. I got to a point where I had healed so much. And then I hit a wall and a plateau, and I'm like, what else can I do? I'm doing everything right. And it was working with my functional medicine doctor and my Ayurvedic doctor, and then with all of these different healers in plant medicine, that I realized that that was the actual work that was waiting for me to do, that my body needed to do that work in order to truly heal on a cellular level. And the show has evolved with that, and talking to more people who have been through these different traumas, having people like you on the show who are so passionate about plant medicine and getting to the actual core issues, not the surface level things that we think are going to heal us. And I think one of the hardest things is we're really scared to see the truth. And
Absolutely.
I was scared to see my own truth. And as my show has evolved in the last 6 months, I've become very open about my own sexual trauma and my own sexual awakening, and being okay with pleasure and speaking up for myself and asking for what I want and how to communicate in relationships, and the dark sides of myself that I never wanted to see, or that I was taught it was not okay to talk about or show. And I'm just becoming more and more aware of how powerful it is to look at myself and see my own truth, and the permission it gives other people to see their own truth or seek their own truth, to even begin that process and not feel shame around that, because we're all shamed so much from a very young age in our society. And we have these beliefs about ourselves and these stories. And it's like, how can we tear down these walls and let go of the shame and reach our truth, whatever that is? And that's kind of what the show has turned into, is sexual awakening, spirituality, and personal development, and how do we weave healing and plant medicine into all of that.
Wow.
That was long-winded, and I live at altitude now, so I'm
brilliant.
out of breath.
Absolutely brilliant, Kelli.
Thanks.
Yes, you are providing such a profound service to the masses. I mean, we're talking, you had said 60 million people or women are struggling with misdiagnoses.
Yeah, and chronic illness in general.
And chronic illness. Wow. Yeah. And and I know that there's 1 in 5 of us are subjected to childhood sexual trauma in the early years of childhood development. Yeah. So catering a message that is going to resonate with so many people, raising your hand, not being fearful of speaking up on taboos, is a tremendously profound service that you're offering. And again, I'd just love to applaud your courage for doing that. And I know there's 4 close girlfriends of mine that have confided with me in these past years about this misdiagnosis problem and challenge, and for you to take this bull by the horns is a beautiful thing.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm realizing more, and I'm sure you probably feel this way. I know your story as well. It's like you live in a box and you only know what you know. And then all of a sudden you take one step out of the box and you're like, oh, there's more outside of this. I had no idea. When you gain context and you have more available to you, information, people, experiences, you're able to see that there's more out there, that it's been a lie that you've been living in, that this is all that's available to you that's in this box. And what I think a lot of people struggle with is taking a step outside that box is fucking terrifying, because it's so unknown. And something that I said the other day online was, if you don't take the step outside the box, what are you doing? Like, are you just going to live in your lie? I understand that it's unknown outside, but what's unknown out there, which is scary, and there's fear and there's shame and maybe rejection because you become who you are and then people don't like that and they're fearful in their own way. Yes, that's out there. But what else is available to you is your pleasure, your joy, your success, and your truth. So do you want to stay in the box and live in the lie and lack of experience and concept and just believe what you've been told because that's what we're taught? Or do you want to take a step outside and take a risk in knowing that there could be rejection there and fear, but also have everything you ever wanted and more. And
Powerful.
it's a really hard place to be.
Yeah. You're calling out in a subtle manner or a forward manner the scarcity thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And all it takes, and I talk about this a lot in my messaging, is all it takes is one earnest step outside of that box, and you're on the growth path. You're on a different path where you can start to see these constructs and these limiting beliefs as they are in an objective manner. It is scary. Change is terrifying, and it's challenging too. It really is. Carl Jung, he says that change in adult humans is one of the most challenging aspects, and I'm totally butchering and not but you get the point.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's powerful that, and we need to see other people do it. And I think that
Mm-hmm.
you taking this bold move and bold stance and realizing that being the change and fully embodying and embracing your truth is an invitation to everyone else to come alive in a similar manner. And so thank you for that.
Thank you. I mean, honestly, this makes me cry even thinking about it. I think so many of us feel alone for so long. And then all of a sudden, you like take a step outside that box and you start to see that there are other people doing the same thing. And I meet people like you, which is why I love you so much. And I think what you're doing is so incredible. And I have this incredible group of people around me like you who make me feel like I am seen and heard in ways I never knew were possible. And I give myself credit for that because I chose to do something different for myself. I chose to advocate for myself. And the gift that I get in return for that are conversations and friendships like this, where it's like, this is hard. Sometimes I have no idea what I'm doing, but I see you and I see you on this path. And I'm so grateful because I know now that I am not alone, that we are in this together, no matter how hard it is. And I think that is one of the most beautiful things about this whole experience is we're oftentimes living alone in isolation and feeling like that bad thing that happened to us when we were little, that it only happened to us. And so we don't ever tell anyone about it. And then all of a sudden you tell one person, I was inappropriately touched when I was little, just for an example. And then all of a sudden 5 of your friends say, me too. And it's this ability to see each other and really hold space for each other in ways that were not possible when you were living in a lie and holding your truth back. When you let that go and you really step into it, it's like, oh, here are my people. Like now I can be seen. Now I can see myself and be comfortable in that and let other people see me. And we're not broken and we get to grow together.
Absolutely. Like you say in your podcast intro, we rise together. Powerful. And you're spot on with this loneliness. And it's not just us talking about the loneliness. It's I mean, our Surgeon General has I mean, we have a loneliness epidemic in our country. And it's a I think never have we been in a time where people are more disconnected and craving connection. And I've said this before, and I'll say it probably every second or third podcast I do, is that vulnerability builds trust, and without trust, we can't have connection. Connection is why we are here on this physical plane.
So true. It's so true. It's everything.
100%. So I want to talk about and I'm glad that we're, you sharing comprehensively your why and what drives you and what you're seeking to do with bringing forth ceremony culture in a place where people can openly express and be vulnerable and feel supported on their healing journeys. You talked about your sexual awakening, and for me, that's really profound. I've listened to a couple of your podcasts, and one of them was really hot. You and Connor were just letting it fly, and I was just
Oh
like,
God.
wow, you are and to be on this path with a strong partner in Connor is a true blessing.
Yeah.
That has got me even more excited about what is possible with the work that you're engaging, knowing that you have a strong man in your corner and someone that is like-minded, and you guys have this shared common vision and are even taking people down to Costa Rica for ayahuasca retreats, which we'll definitely hit on. I'd love to
Yes.
share that, share your work with my audience here, as I think that you would be a trusted ally and a perfect person to embark on this journey with. But I want to, before we get there, the sexual energy is, and I was giving this some thought this morning, and we channel our sexual energy in two different directions. We make babies, or we make creative ideas.
Mm.
And the idea that so many people are struggling with, and I think that these psychedelic medicines can be profound for healing sexual trauma. And so often, like we talked about with the podcast that we did, that I'm going to be putting out tonight, our interview on
Oh, good.
ceremony wellness. We talked about our warriors, our veterans. That it's sadly a disproportionate amount, a highly disproportionate amount of our war veterans are subjected to childhood sexual trauma in the early years of childhood development. So this is something time and time again we're seeing with these medicines, is that it allows people to clear those blockages. And can you talk about your sexual awakening and what this has meant to you?
Yeah, definitely. I think this is such an important part and piece of healing that we miss, because sex is so taboo and we're not supposed to talk about it, and we're supposed to pretend like no one's doing it. And it's such a common thing, and that pretty much everyone's having sex. So why don't we talk about it? Why don't we educate around it? Why don't we talk about communication, that it's safe to experience pleasure and orgasm, that women have just as big of a right as men to experience pleasure and orgasm, that you don't have to feel shame because you want to have sex. Like, there are so many things we are not taught. And I think a lot of this stems from religion. And so many of the guests that I've had on my show, so many of my friends talk about, whether it's evangelical Christianity or the Catholic Church, you name it, sex is just not supposed to be talked about or had. And there's so much control around it. There's so much suppression and there's so much shame. And then add on top of that, that so many people have sexual assault or molestation at such a young age, that we then go on to view our bodies as something to be ashamed of. And I never really felt comfortable in my own skin. I never felt comfortable asking for what I wanted. And I started masturbating at 5. And my parents were amazing, but I remember like going to my mom and be like, "Mommy, look what I can do." And she was like, "Oh, okay, so we're not going to do that." And then I was in class one day, it was in like first grade, and I'm sitting on the little carpet and my teacher's reading to us, and I like stick my hand in my pants and I'm touching myself. And she was like, "We don't do that. If you need to do that, you need to go to the bathroom," which of course we don't want everyone masturbating in public, but it's like at 5 years old, I took this as, that is bad, do not do it. And I don't remember touching myself again until I was probably 16 or 17 years old. And I had such a disconnection from my body. And I really was scared to ask for what I wanted, because I thought that that was wrong and selfish. And no one ever told me that I was allowed to, or that I could, or that's a right that I had. And I was with a very controlling boyfriend when I lost my virginity, and I basically had to do everything he said the way he wanted it. And so I just had this really jaded idea of what sex was. And I realized in my last relationship that I wasn't having the experience I wanted. And I started to wear lingerie and kind of ask for what I want. And I felt a lot of rejection and I felt a lot of shame around that. And I I didn't really know what to do with it. And all I knew was that something had to change and I wanted more. And when I did ayahuasca for the first time, the third night, I believe, was extreme orgasm. During ceremony, my whole body was like in pure pleasure, and I was seeing like all the colors, and my whole body just felt so good. And I saw that if I let go and surrendered to the pleasure and the orgasm that I deserved, that I could heal my body of chronic illness and of shame, and that I deserved this. Like, those were all the things that came through in ceremony for me. And so when Connor and I started dating shortly thereafter, and I felt really comfortable saying what I wanted and being sexual and touching myself, and a lot of the barriers that had been created for me just started to fall. And then again, when I went to the Realness Retreat in Costa Rica in May, I had the same experience. And the message again came across as sexual healing heals everything, specifically chronic illness. And that is a message that I have to get across in everything that I do and the way that I teach, is that pleasuring yourself, touching yourself, even not in a sexual way, like touching your arms and being comfortable in your own skin, loving
Embodied.
your body. Yeah, it's like, if you access that, you can heal everything. And I really started to take that to heart. And even whether it's envisioning your life during self-pleasuring and orgasm, you can manifest during that time. You can connect so much further and deeper with your partner. I mean, it really allows you to access parts of your body and your experience that have been suppressed and that you were never able to. And what I find is that with every client I work with, or with every woman who comes on our retreats, that is one of the biggest things I hear, is they don't touch themselves. They're scared to, they don't know that they're allowed to. And so their entire sexual experience is then being taken out into the world. The way they live in the world, the way they present themselves, the way they are in relationship, the way they work. There is such a lack, such a shame, and such a disconnect. And so if you have that in your body, that's how you're going to show up in the world. So how can we heal sexually in order to show up in the world the way we want, and ask for what we want, manifest the life that we want, and have this type of abundance, this orgasmic abundance that no one ever told us was possible?
Wow. Again. Yeah, that's beautiful. Your experience, and thank you for sharing that, your intimate details. And it sounds like that third ceremony, you had that full taste of cosmic ecstasy, and that beyond love that I talk about in the introduction or the epilogue of my book, Worth the Fight. And it's such a profound experience to have, and surely words do it no justice at all. And how you've been able to channel that energy, and to put that energy in service of others is really admirable. And I think that is how we turn this culture around. This fear train around is by leaning in and healing this trauma, and healing our traumas, and bringing forth in time these medicines that work, that target the root of the problem. And we can slowly start breaking down some of these societal constructs that no longer serve the evolution of our people. And these constructs that may be, with the climate crisis, may be very well endangering the evolution of our people.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that, there's such a release that comes with orgasm, right? So if you're not orgasming on your own or with a partner, think about how much energy you're keeping within you. And for me, when it comes to chronic illness or illness in general, we get caught up in holding on to something and holding this identity or holding this illness because we're scared to release. And if you're scared to release in orgasm and you're scared to release in illness, how do you ever heal? You're holding on to these toxic things that keep your body in a place that you don't want to be. But we're so accustomed to living this way that we don't know what's possible. If you just released, if you just let go. I talk to so many women who are also controlling, type A, perfectionists, and they're so scared to let go and have an orgasm because what will happen? What will they look like? Will they look weird? Will their partner think they're gross? Will something happen that's different? Will they be completely out of control? And what does that say about them? So there's so much that goes into the release aspect of sex, where we're not even allowing ourselves to melt into pleasure because we're so scared of what pleasure brings. And that's such a convoluted idea, but we don't even know that until we're on the other side and we're like, what was I doing?
Yeah, and this powerful notion is drowned out in our culture by prescription medicine, by alcohol, by drugs, by a different form of sex. I call it, the bullshit incorporated version of sex. This superficial connection that so many people get lost in, that pursuit of sex for like the zero sum game that so many played, and I played when I was struggling in self abuse and being lost in the idea of trying to accumulate sexual partners, and the idea that in essentially just projecting my own trauma and being unable to connect at that deep level. And because I think that when we have this trauma, and it's extremely challenging to surrender, but that's the goal, is these protective mechanisms that we adopt in our youth keep us safe, and just like your mechanisms kept you safe until you got to a point in your late 20s where you're like, this safety is not going, this safety is putting me in potential harm, because it's the safety of what worked for you when you were younger was now what stands between you and this true bliss and this heart connection and this soul connection that that those protective mechanisms cut people off from.
Well, and I think something I was taught, I don't remember who told me this, but it really helped me. Oh, I think it was my somatic therapist. They do this thing where when they're working on you, they talk to your body and before they start, and they say to your body, thank you so much for protecting Kelli. You've done such an amazing job, but it's okay now. She's safe, and it's time to release that and let go. And we're so grateful that you've done all this work to make her feel safe and to keep her away from harm, whatever it is. And I've had those conversations with my own body and my own like inner child of saying, look, you did such a beautiful job of keeping me safe, and what safety meant for us 5 years ago, 15 years ago is different than what safety means now. And it's okay. Like, you're off the clock, and now it's time to play and explore, and let's go into this together. And I think when you acknowledge what your body and your mind have been through and really show yourself love and grace for all of that, your body can relax and know that it's time to go to a different level of safety, and that you can take those steps and not come there out of fear, but really go there out of excitement and expansion.
So true. So true. And when we're going to those places with excitement and excitement and expansion, in that spirit of gratitude, that's what came to mind for me, is being grateful for everything, even the tough lessons that that we learn, and everything is a lesson, and putting those, I think that's an integral part of putting to bed these protective mechanisms that we're talking about, that have once kept us safe, but now endanger us as we're looking for that looking to embody more fully that deeper connection.
beautifully put.
So let's talk about your Realness Retreat.
Okay.
I'd love to hear more about this. And again, like I said earlier in the podcast, the idea of having a trusted guide on this this process is paramount. It's essential. Like you'd said a moment ago, the need to be able to surrender and to feel safe and like you're in good hands is it's paramount. And in order to maximize this situation or maximize this medicine. So yeah, we'd love to hear about this Realness Retreat.
Thank you. Yeah, I think the most important thing to me when I talk about plant medicine publicly and privately is to always make sure people understand that safety should always be your number one priority. And as plant medicine has grown traction, especially here in the United States and in Peru, people can get themselves into some pretty dangerous situations. And oftentimes I think young women who go down to Peru and think that, oh, I'm going to go on this healing experience, the energy in Peru can be very dark. And if you're not really educated on where to go and who to surround yourself and which healers to be with, you can get yourself into some pretty energetically and emotionally difficult situations. And so I always like to start with that because I think we talk about this, and you and I have both been in very beautiful, safe situations. But I want people to know that there is a dark side to working with plant medicine and to trusting people who call themselves quote unquote shamans. I wouldn't ever recommend someone just go somewhere unless they know someone who has been there or multiple people, and that that it's going to be a safe space where you're really taken care of and there's an extreme amount of integrity around the medicine. And that's something that Connor has really taught me because he has been working with the medicine in a lot of different ways for years now. And that's something that he really feels passionately about. And that's why we do our retreat at Soltara in Costa Rica. And Matt, the people there too. They're so incredible.
Yeah,
and
stand up.
yeah, that's part of why they created Soltara, is because there needed to be more safe spaces for people to do this work. And to bring in healers from the Shipibo tradition in Peru, to bring them to Costa Rica for 3 months at a time, to be able to really impact people. And so that anyone coming in knows they're working with the best of the best healers in the world, and they're getting the cleanest medicine, and the ceremony is true, and it has been, expanded and worked on, and everyone involved really cares about the safety and the process and the respect of the medicine. That's a huge thing. And I went to Connor's retreat in May, like I said earlier, just as a guest. And it was so incredible for me to be in the Maloka with him. We were across the room from each other, but we had this beautiful experience and such connectedness. You can't see anything. It's pitch black. But I felt like he was right next to me. At times I felt like he had his hand on my chest or on my leg and telling me I was okay, or bringing me back from the ethers when I would blast off into the universe. And I just felt so connected to him, and he had the same experience. And so that part of it was really special for me. But we decided to do this together now because we both really want to create safe spaces for people to work with the medicine. And it's impacted and expanded our lives so much in such a variety of ways, and really helped us heal on a very, very deep level. And so the Realness Retreat is at the end of March in 2020, and it's in Costa Rica, and we do 3 nights of ceremony. And we also hold, we'll be facilitating our own like men's circle and women's circle without the medicine, to have conversations and journaling and really open up that space. And like for me, having that feminine energy in a container by itself, and then the masculine, the same thing. We really want to provide that for people and have those conversations to start the week. And then we work with the healers, and we get flower baths, and we get to have conversations with them before we ever enter ceremony. And they don't speak English, they speak Shipibo. So they have a translator, and you get to hear from these incredible healers of what they're seeing within you before you ever go into ceremony. And I think that's really, really special. And then throughout the day, it's so beautiful there. We're eating incredible food. We get to walk around, go down to the beach, take naps, journal in hammocks in the middle of all these beautiful trees. And we have a closing ceremony that Connor leads, and we do a body paint. And so you put paint on your fingers and you go around the circle and you paint what you see in that person. And by the time you've been with people for 4 to 5 days and in the medicine and ceremony, you get so connected and you truly see people for who they are down to their heart. And so people walk out of there just crying because they feel so seen and so understood in a way they never have before. And it's such a beautiful bond. So yeah, it's incredible. We have 15 spots left. So if anyone wants to join, they can go to gettherealness.com/realness-retreat, or they can message me, and I can answer any questions they have.
Wonderful. Thank you for breaking that down.
Yeah,
And,
thank you.
It's everything you're saying is in line with what should be said.
Thank you.
This is a sacred duty and responsibility, and to see you and Connor uphold that as in the highest honor is really inspiring. So thank you for providing that service to people. And yeah, I'm sure it'll be a magical time of people really digging in and feeling that deep level of connection that we're largely cut off from in the West here.
Thank you. Yeah, and if you ever want to join us, you have a permanent invitation, Matt.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah.
So are there any parting words that you would give to anybody that is looking to come onto this path? Perhaps any integration tips that you're integrating, and ways to integrate these profound peak experiences and put them in service of this better world that we're all looking to create?
Yeah, there's a couple things that come to mind that I think have really helped me in this process when stuff is hard. It's one, journaling is the most magnificent tool that you could ever use. And I think that if you can't get honest with yourself journaling by yourself, that no one else sees it, how do you get honest with yourself with others and really be willing to see your truth? And journaling doesn't have to look a certain way. I think that's why a lot of people don't do it, is because they don't know where to start. They don't know what to write, and it's confusing and overwhelming, so they just don't do it. And what I always tell people is just start writing whatever it is that is in your head. And that may take 3 months for you to get all these thoughts out of your head, this like crazy chaos and streamline of thoughts and doubts and surface level stuff like the sky is blue. And, we have so many thoughts. But once you do that, all of a sudden you'll notice that you're writing things that are coming from places you didn't know. And maybe you're writing and you have no idea where that came from or that you even felt that way. But when you start getting rid of noise, you start to create space for quiet. And in that quiet is your truth. And I really believe in, even if it's 10 minutes a day of journaling, just writing down what's on your heart, what you're grateful for, what's hard, maybe a difficult conversation you had with a partner, maybe admitting something that you've never admitted to yourself before. Anything and everything is on the table for what you can put in journaling. And I really feel like that's a beautiful way to start processing what has happened to you in your life. For me, it was a way to get really honest about things that were really painful and sad. And I cried and I screamed and it was so hard in the beginning. And sometimes it still is. But what I've noticed is that the more I journal, the more honest I am, the more in a state of gratitude and peace and calm that I am. And I feel so much more grounded. So I think that's really an important place to start. And now I forget what my other tool was. Oh, yes. I am speaking to the perfectionists and the overachievers listening to this show. I think when it comes to wellness and spirituality, so often we get carried away and doing all the things, and we want to journal, and then we want to meditate, and then we want to go for a walk, and then we want to pull cards and hold crystals and channel and all these things. And it's all wonderful. But what I did was I did it all, and I did it all the time. And I was constantly processing and never felt grounded. And I never felt like I was good enough because there was always another thing that I could be doing in order to make myself better. And I had a girlfriend tell me one day on the phone, she said, when it comes to spirituality and growth, you have to sip from the water bottle. You can't chug. And I think that
Love
speaks
that.
to our conversation, on integration. It's like, you can't chug when you're trying to integrate. You can't do all the things. It's how much can we actually process at once? Not that much. And if we are trying to, which I am guilty of time and time again, I try and do all the things. It's so overwhelming. Your body will shut down. So how can you honor your body and show yourself grace and process slowly and honestly, but with a level head and a groundedness, so that you don't get overwhelmed? So you can actually integrate more and do more work from that place. Because if you do too much and you chug from the water bottle, you're going to get overwhelmed and feel chaotic. And then what are you able to do from that space? So I think that's one of the other most important things, is you can get really caught up in doing all this work, but is what you're doing at a pace that feels right for you, and only you know that.
Again, wow. Yeah, very, very profound. And I can tell you're sharing right from your heart, from your personal
Oh,
experiences.
thank you.
And everything you're saying resonates big time with me and my journey. And it was the journaling, and frankly, when I look back at some of my
Oh
journals
God.
and some of my notebooks, but it's like, at the time I had the courage to even scribble,
Mm-hmm.
and that led to me writing a 310-page book,
Mm-hmm.
and that's going to lead to many more books. And the profound nature of our thoughts and putting pen to paper cannot be understated. So thank you for sharing that as an integration tool. And the sip from a water bottle, that is absolutely brilliant metaphor. And
You can
it's
steal it. It's not mine.
yes, well, most definitely. And yeah, that felt like I was sipping from a water bottle for the 4 years that I was really in the integration big time.
Mm,
And with the knowing that if we take in more water, if we chug, we could very well drown.
mm-hmm.
So slowing down and telling myself, what is the hurry? And having that journey, kind of going back to that journey thinking that we talked about earlier, that if we never arrive, then we sure as heck better get comfy with the pace in which we're climbing.
Mm-hmm.
So very beautiful parting words and wisdom that you're eloquently sharing. And you are quickly becoming one of my favorite human beings. So thank you so much
Oh, thank
for
you.
your vulnerable spirit, for your open heart, for your dedication and commitment to serving others through leveraging your story and doing this incredible work that you're doing. So you are definitely a rising star, and look forward to keeping an eye on all this incredible work that you're doing. And thank you so much for sharing this time with me and the Worth the Fight podcast audience. And where can people find you?
Yes. So on Instagram, I'm at Kelli M. Tennant, and kellitennant.com.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Kelli. Really
Thank you
appreciate
so
this
much,
time.
Matt. You're the best.
Look forward to the next time.
Yes.
All the best. Much love. Wow. Again, I told y'all that Kelli was awesome. Such a special opportunity to share her story of overcoming. Her transformational journey has been a huge inspiration to me, to see the way that she walks through the world and the way that she's embracing a leadership role and being the change. As Gandhi and Martin Luther King told us, that's the only way to hit the hearts and minds of the people we wish to serve. If you found value in this content, please consider donating, sharing, rating, and reviewing. This will help us expand our circle of influence and to get this message of hope and healing, get these messages of hope and healing out past our current circle of influence. If you're in a financial position to donate, we have an account set up on Patreon. We'd absolutely love your monthly support if you're finding value in this content. Every little bit adds up. Again, this is a labor of love for me. Truly is. I enjoy doing this work, but it takes a lot of time. And we'd most certainly love your support. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for your support. Much love, y'all.